Hello again. I'm Andy Vining, reading from my mother's diaries, episode 16. We're now in May and June 1950. So welcome back to Hiltonbury Farm, where, by May of 1950, the year seemed suddenly to burst open. Not quietly, but all at once, as though house, fields, family and village had all decided together there was no more time to waste. Because May at Hiltonbury never arrived gently. It came bustling, curtains off the windows, boilers steaming, irons hissing, brushes out, paint pots open, and Mrs. Fulbrook on her knees polishing floors and cleaning the bedrooms. The sweep, cleaning the chimneys, and me somehow trying to keep ahead of it all. Washing one minute, darning the next, painting hall doors before dinner, then hurrying off to dancing in the evening. And while the farm pulling at us too, because the spring was turning, and once May took hold, farming seemed suddenly to race. John could feel it. I think he always could. He was forever striding off somewhere in the evenings. Growmore Club one night, NFU another, farm surveys, bar end sales, cricket fixtures down in county ground, and Masonic meetings. He never really sat still, though even when he did, his mind was usually in the field somewhere, thinking about picking the peas, thinking about hay, thinking about the cattle, thinking about the weather. Always the weather, and the weather that spring was teasing. It was rain one day, glorious warmth the next, sunshine enough to tempt a farmer, then clouds enough to make him nervous. And John grew forever watchful, looking at skies over Fleckford as though bargaining with them, because once the season tipped towards hay, everything mattered. An hour mattered, a shower mattered, a wrong wind mattered, and beneath all the domestic bustle, that old farming tension had begun. Though there was joy too, such joy. 22 chicks hatched one Saturday, 22, all under 2 wonderful hens, tiny golden creatures tumbling over one another. Then Mr. Cross arrived with still more little chicks he'd reared for us. The poultry runs were alive with noise, and I was as delighted as a child with them all. Then Mary Sinclair sent me an extraordinary box of clothes, an evening dress, a beautiful costume, treasures. I remember feeling positively glamorous in the middle of poultry dust and darning wool, and laughing at the absurdity of it. There was laughter everywhere that month. Taking Mother home one evening in the car, and we laughed so much we could scarcely breathe. Joan with her dry jokes, Bet forever stirring some fun. The Deans impossible to be solemn around for long. Even ordinary visits became little adventures. There was the cowslip expedition to Hursley, supposedly a sensible outing, but with Norman and the Deans involved, it became half botanical survey, half comedy, with arms full of flowers and tea afterwards. Much argument over whose patch was finest. But whichever goes, the cowslips were beautiful. And John pretending impatience while clearly enjoying every minute of it. Joan and Les often came up to the farm, Joan in and out like family and helping me wash the eggs always. Always ready with gossip, a joke, or a bunch of pinks cut from her garden for me. And often a cup of tea sometimes turned into an hour, or 3. There was one evening, Flexford had us all wandering under the blue haze amongst the beeches, and Joan declared she'd stay there all summer if someone bought sandwiches. That was Joan. And Betty, dear Betty, walking up unexpectedly as though the road existed purely to bring her to our kitchen. There was always tea to pour when Betty appeared, always news, often laughter, and sometimes thoughts over Fred's new job prospects. And when he got the new job at Duke's of Bishop's Waltham, there was great celebration, as though one of us had been appointed. It was amazing to see him going to work at last. In the middle of it all, Andrew had to go to Salisbury for an interview at St. Proba's School. I was very worried about it. I tried to sound calm. Inside, I was all apprehension. And Jennifer went off to France on holiday, and then she came back with stories and excitements. Children growing up while one scarcely noticed. And meanwhile, Hiltonbury kept moving. Always moving. By late May, the fields began tightening with work. Hoeing, disking in the fields, raspberries weeded, and John becoming almost possessed once hay looked likely. Because hay was everything. There was no real explaining to those who haven't lived it, that urgency, that dread, that exhilaration. Fine weather came in early June, and with it the whole farm lurched into haymaking. And suddenly every conversation was hay, every meal interrupted by hay, every social call measured against hay. Will it hold fine? Can we get Ramalli in time before it rains? The front field is next. Clouds over Hersley look troublesome. John spoke of little else. Even picnics were discussed in relation to hay. We'd be laying out sandwiches at Highcliffe and John would be scanning the clouds inland. The Deans teased him mercilessly. John, he'll bring a barometer to the seaside next, and perhaps he would have done. But beneath the humour was anxiety, because once grass was cut, the race began, and some afternoons you could feel the whole farm straining. Men turning hay, machines rattling, dust rising skylarks above, and John driving the pace. One eye on the crop, one on the gathering clouds. There were evenings he came in still carrying that tension, quiet, calculating, and if rain patterned in the night, one could almost hear his heart sink. Would it spoil? Would it blacken? Would all that labour be lost? One afternoon at Flexford the sky darkened while hay still lay half gathered. I remember the urgency, everyone moving quicker. No idle words, no wasted motion, and John, usually steady as oak, openly fretful. Move that wagon up, turn that row quickly. Quick, while it holds, while the weather holds. There was drama in that, real drama. Not invented, farm drama. And when showers just missed us, the relief was almost giddy. Tea tasted better, supper was merrier, life itself lighter. Perhaps only farmers know that feeling. Then the heat returned, hotter and hotter. The hottest day since last September, they said. And I'd sit under the apple tree, darning in a sunsuit, while bees worked overhead and I could hear the distant hum of the haying carts. Such peace on the surface, such effort beneath it. That was farmhouse life. Always two layers. Picnics, sunbathing, bathing costumes ready, tennis at the chalks, listening to boxing results on Frank's car radio, Janet's birthday at Highcliffe. Wonderful nonsense with packed dinners and wind-blown rugs, and yet always back to the farm. Always Hiltonbury Farm. Even the Royal County Show became part pleasure, part professional. Reconnaissance of stock, John studying the jerseys, Norman full of opinions, the Deans laughing through wind and drizzle, and me writing diary notes in the car on the way home. Then the cattle TT testing. Such suspense, John again trying not to show concern, waiting for the results. And all the cattle but two passed. His delight was almost boyish, of victory only two, because in the past we'd lost a lot more than that. One of those quiet farming triumphs outsiders never see. And still ordinary life ran gloriously alongside. Kitchen curtains were made, marzipan spread on Janet's cake for her birthday. A new sugar pot was bought in Winchester. The strawberries coming along beautifully, raspberries being picked. I dressed the chicken for Nora. The chimney sweep arrived, visitors endless. Saturday visitors almost a ritual. Frank and Wynne, the Deans, Joan and Les, Mother and Bella, Beechcroft relations, the farmhouse like a little station through which everybody passed. And evenings. Ah, those evenings, warm doors open, tea becoming supper, supper becoming stories, stories becoming helpless laughter. There was one evening, ham and strawberries and ice cream with Bob and Mother and half the world seemingly gathered. We had such a wonderful time, the sort that leaves one weak, and perhaps afterwards stepping into the yard, stars above the barns, cattle stirring softly, hay scent drifting, and thinking, this is enough, this is abundance, though John, even then, would likely be glancing towards tomorrow's weather. That was John, half companion, half farmer, entirely both. There was humour too in his seriousness. The Deans loved picking his solemn farming moments, Joan as well. I remember saying John treated a promising hay spell like a royal engagement, and he half agreed, because to him it was. And looking back, those months were full of sunshine, yes, but edged with jeopardy. The old farming truth, good fortune, always fragile, one shower from ruin. 1 week, one fine week from triumph, and perhaps that is why those diaries pages sparkle, because happiness never feels idle. It is earned, between labour, between worry, between weather, and all the richer for it. Late summer seemed gathered in both hands. Hay mostly won, fields breathing easier, fruit was ripening, visitors of course still pouring through the door, and Hiltonbury humming as though summer itself had taken lodgings there. But beneath it, one sensed bigger tests still ahead. The harvest was waiting, and harvest always asks a reckoning. But that belongs to another chapter, for May and June 1950 remain in my mother's diaries almost sunlit. Busy pages, funny pages, anxious pages, happy pages, pages smelling of beeswax and hay dust and strawberries. And if I listen closely, I can still hear them. Joan laughing, Betty calling from the gate, the Deans arriving for supper, John in the yard saying, if this weather holds, always if this weather holds. And perhaps that was the refrain of farming life itself. Hope, spoken cautiously, with one eye on the sky. And so we close out June of 1950. Thank you for listening. I'm Andy Vining reading My Mother's Diaries.